And so I don't see benefit there. The one religion that I see benefit to, and people are going to go, I don't know, people are going to react to this, but whatever, is... What up, people? So this video is kind of a follow-up to my last video, which was a follow-up to the last video, which was a follow-up to the last video. So we're just keeping this conversation going. And what I talked about on my last video was, why should I be a Christian? And then I went on and talked about how I think that there is no benefit at all to religion, but there are benefits to spirituality. And then down in the comments section, I had a few friendly reminders that I was being super vague about what spirituality is. And I halfway intentionally did that, halfway didn't realize I was doing it, but once I realized I was doing it from you all commenting on it, then I was like, I'm glad I did that so that I could make a different video on it. So I want to read some comments from that last video, and in these comments, basically, they evolved into a conversation, and they both brought up the fact that I was of something towards spirituality. And I was like, wait a minute, what is your definition of what spirituality is? And here's what they said. One of them is from Matthew Michael Mashella. Sorry, dude. I hope I pronounced that right. He says, my definition of spirituality is the innate desire and need to be connected to that which is greater than ourselves through the relationship and interaction of all living things. Okay. And I had somebody else, and I assume, Matthew Michael, what you've told me you're not, I think you've said you're not Christian, but you are more of a spiritualist, but you follow Jesus. So I'm just going to, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to call that a Christian's perspective. And then I had somebody else comment, Speak Vegan Change. Coming from an atheist perspective, so I assume that you are atheist, I agree with everything you said except one thing. The word spirituality is simply too vague for me to say that it is beneficial. I can think of a lot of trivial examples of activities/experiences people would classify as spirituality. And you're right. So I wanted to make a video that was separately talking about what is the definition of things that are spiritual. And I want to start off by talking about a circular argument about these things that we hold. Those two views are common views. That one is just about, like, I view spirituality as connection, and typically among the more spiritual or religious people. And then from an atheistic perspective, that spirituality, it's too vague and it even doesn't exist and that sort of thing. So these are two very common camps of thought, and the circular argument here is that typically from the spiritualist perspective, once they accept that even something like connection is spiritual, then all these things, even thinking deeply, becomes spiritual. Even a feeling becomes spiritual. Even dreams become spiritual. I even read on one forum that somebody believes that our dreams is our soul leaving our body when we're asleep and experiencing all these things, and then what we are seeing is what our soul is experiencing in different dimensions. You can't make this stuff up. And you can also say your imagination is spiritual, and all these simple little things are spiritual. And from the other perspective, none of that is spiritual. All of that is just being a part of, it's just a part of being human. And for me, I have to agree with more this camp of thought, which is more the atheistic camp of thinking. And I'm going to explain why. So part of my journey in all of this skepticism and all of this doubting and questioning and being in this constant state of, is God and spiritual and supernatural real, came from me being in this camp of thinking, where every single little thing, seeing numbers line up, seeing just having a daydream but it meaning something to me, even dreams that I had at night, all of this was like hyper spiritual to me. And I thought it was all leading somewhere, and it just didn't. And so maybe I was just, I had enough disappointment to where I was just really fed up. And then one day I just kind of woke up and realized, like, this is my imagination. This is a lot of me. This is a lot of, meditation, contemplation, all of that is good, but it doesn't make it spiritual. And the thing that I appreciate about this camp of thinking, which is more of the atheistic camp of thought, is that they get seen as really cynical. And I don't think atheists are cynical. I think that most of them, I think a lot of them are skeptical. And what I appreciate about this camp of thought, the atheistic camp of thought, I realize I'm kind of generalizing things, but just for sake of communication, I'm calling it what it is. But what I've found is what I really relate to is that atheists want solid truth, want solid evidence. And I am in the same frame of thinking to where I'm like, I don't want to be deceived by just something that's in my imagination. I don't want to be deceived by just something that's in my feelings. I want the truth. I do want the cold hard facts, but I do want something that, even if it's subjective to me, it's something that I would personally know that this is something outside of myself, that this is what spirituality is. And I think that, honestly, I think that a lot of the church or just religious people that go to a point of even those that small little things are spiritual, then it just gets more disappointing and harder to relate to those kind of people than the people that are like, give me the truth. And so the circular argument here is that normally the people in this camp of thinking of spiritual thought, to where imagination, dreams, and all that is spiritual, they get to a point where they're saying, well, this is evidence of God's existence because these things are obviously spiritual. And then this camp of thinking says, no, that's just part of being human. And so eventually we get to a point of science, and they say, well, this is science, and they say, well, this is science, and so, well, this is science, so therefore God, and they say this is science, and this camp of thinking said this is science, therefore science. And so you get into the circular argument, which basically, it's like, if all of this is from a supernatural, from a spirit that created it, then here it is right there. Science is every bit of evidence that God exists. But if God does not exist, then it's just science. So it's like, either God created science and science is everything that is God, or science is just science. And there's just like, it's so much of a circular argument, and it really intertwines with this whole, what is spirituality? What defines what is spiritual? And this is why we find ourselves disagreeing so much, because we can't even, we want to discover, I want to discover, something that is supernatural, something that is from another dimension. And I have looked into other dimensions and string theory and Einstein, Kaluza and Klein, the multiverse, all of that. And I kind of made a video on it in the past called Does the Multiverse Prove That There's a Heaven? But I didn't really go in depth into it. So if you want that video, let me know, and I will go in depth into it because I love that stuff. So there's a circular argument, and there's the two camps of thought. So what is my definition of things that are spiritual, of something that is spiritual? Well, I used to study a lot of the Christian mystics, and I studied, some supernatural claims from, Buddhist monks and other things of that nature, being that people, like Buddhist monks, levitating and then their body glowing from light, and then their body shrinking and their soul leaving their body even while they're still alive. And then there's pictures of these monks that their bodies are like the size of a baby because they shrunk when they were in an enlightenment. And then there's also things of this one story that I read about that apparently it is in historical documents that these mystics went to share the gospel at a point where obviously, the classic missionary thing where it's like, Jesus, God is not accepted here, and if you preach it, you will die. So, of course, that's where they went. Then they preach the gospel, they get caught, and they're sentenced to death, and as they are about to get their heads chopped off, they're saying a prayer to God. And then they get their heads chopped off, and as they're saying the prayer, their heads are rolling, and as their heads are rolling, they are finishing their prayer. They're still talking. And then their heads just start glowing. And even some crazy, heard of, haven't been able to find it anywhere, but heard of a church that's in Mexico. It may have been a couple hundred years ago, or maybe it's still today. I don't know. Just hang in there with me for these examples of this church that has chains attached to their chairs because during whoever's preaching, these people just start levitating because of God and the presence of God. See, those kind of things for me, that is spiritual. That is something where I look at that and I'm like, gravity is a law of nature. So how are you levitating right now? How are you defying that law of science? So that to me is something that is spiritual. Now, where do I see the benefit in that? So I've done a lot of research into other religions, and looking at other religions, that's just what they are, religions. And, well, a lot of religions. Every religion is a religion. Duh. Wow. And so I don't see benefit there. The one religion that I see benefit to, and people are going to go, I don't know, people are going to react to this, but whatever, is true Christianity is not religion. It's more under spiritualism, and you're free to disagree with that, but it's just what I see. And if one of you wants to correct me that it is just religion, then please correct me, because I'd love to get further towards the truth. But true Christianity is not so much a religion like rule following, and I know this is super cliche, but this is just what I see when I read the New Testament and the Bible, is that it's a relationship. And so I'm like, if there is a God that created all of this, that created me, having a personal relationship with Him would prove some benefit. And because I can get to know myself more, I can get to know others more, I can get to connect better with everything that's going on inside me, but also the world around me. Because if the world was created by Him, then I want to connect with all of it. I want to be so involved in the now, in this life, not just in this dimension, but if there is another dimension that has an effect on this one, I want to be in touch with that as well. I haven't seen it, I haven't experienced it, but that is the benefit that I see in all of the religions that I have studied, because no other religion offers a relationship with the God that you're serving. It's all kind of a slave mentality, rule-based kind of thing, and that's what Christianity has fallen into, of course. But that's why I say true Christianity is more of I'm seeing it as more of a spiritualist thing, but I could be wrong about that. So if I am, and if you see some fault in that, please call me out on it. Atheists watching this, I'm talking to you. So yeah, I define spirituality as way more extreme than a lot of people, but intentionally, because I think, if God doesn't exist, then all those things are just a part of being human, and it's a really beautiful thing. And so that's that. Those are my thoughts, and that's what I define as spirituality, and those are what the benefits that I see in it. Could be wrong, could be right. I want to know your thoughts. So tell me down in the comments, what is your definition of spirituality? Because I see that it's oftentimes so subjective to the individual, which I also find really interesting. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you define spirituality is. So this should be fun. And as always, I'll see you guys in the next video. All right, peace.
What makes you the spirit of truth? Who created you? Where's the proof? I can't ignore history. If all this isn't right, then why not come show me?